Thank you. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate for the time for this, you can say the training. And in this particular session, we will be covering about the topic on actions. And so Raj, he will showcase us about the methodology steps as well as the practice steps, how it is going to be implemented with the different means, and what is the main, you can say the difference it can be if you can if you want to compare it with other, you can say business processes in the Dynamics 365 or Dataverse processes there. A little bit about housekeeping. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. By the time that you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. This recording will be available on YouTube. And once again, really appreciate for your time and the cooperation. All of our previous content is already available on the YouTube channel, and even though for the presentation, you can access OneDrive folder. And as I mentioned, we are going to cover actions, which mainly Mr. Wahaj is going to be present, and as well as a part of the definition, as well as you can see the explanation about the action. He will also give us a system walkthrough about the implementation, and then we will talk about some consideration, and we'll see what are the other sessions they are coming in. So, Mr. Wahaj, if you can take the control at this point, and you can proceed further.
Yeah, sure. I'll just so if you see action, I would say the type of process in Power Platform model driven app or Dynamics 365 customer engagement. Same thing. We can use these interchangeably because the customer engagement is built on top of model driven app. Okay. Now, I would also like to give another example. I would say definition is the actions are like workflows, I would say, but I would say these are composite tasks which workflow say. For example, workflow can send an email, it can have multiple steps, but wherever you would like to club this as a new functionality of the system, you can create an action. So let's go through the definition. I'll give you example. For example, we say so the definition says, by the help of actions, we can extend the functionality of the system, right? Customer engagement. When we say extend functionality, functionality, that means out of the box in the CRM or the customer engagement or the Power Apps, model driven apps, there are only, I would say, limited actions available or limited operations available. Like if you create a table, what you can do with the particular record of a table, you can create the record, right? You can update the record, you can delete, you can assign, you can share. uh, I guess these are all the major, I would say, operations provided by the platform. Okay. Now let's say I'm implementing a system where I say I have a quotation, which is a table, and that quotation I would like to get it approved. So when you do an approval, there are multiple ways to do that. You will of course have approval status, you will have approval or rejection comments, you will have let's say there is an attachment to this and all. So one way is you do this in a very normal way where you can create multiple workflows, and one sets or maybe one workflow where you sets approval status on. But you can expose this as a message, or I would say as an operation or as a task also, or as an action also, as per your platform for your platform, for your business. For example, you say approve is a generic action which can be used by multiple systems to approve a document or approve a quotation in Dynamics 365. So that means I will create an action called approve, and whether there is an integration done, let's say with your ERP system, and as soon as they, one way is they create the, let's say, quotation, and they can also call the approve as a, I would say, function. A new function is added as an action. So similarly, we can see an example of reject, delegate, isolate. These are just examples, right? That we can to using actions. This could be anything. Another example I would say is, let's think about the loyalty program where we have all the customer spend, let's say, and based on the customer spend, the amount he has spent on our business, we categorize them into tiers, let's say gold, silver, platinum, and we generate some points for these guys, right? So we can have a create an action of saying, let's say, redeem points. So when let's say someone purchases the item or a product on a, let's say, your website, we are assuming it is integrated with your Dynamics 365 system, and they can simply call redeem or earn action to, generate points or redeem points. Behind the scenes in the system, you must have done a lot, I would say, more tasks which are as I would say packaged as an action. So this is another example. I'll move ahead, and then first I will show you some more. I'm saying these are same use cases, but I divided them into, some more steps. So let's say when I say approve, this is not just limited to these. Just as an example, approve, maybe you will just update approve action updates the status of the record. Let's say account or quotation or invoice, whatever, and sends an email. So we can package this functionality into an action. Reject is similarly updates the status, sends email, and also update rejection notes or comments, right? Escalate is an action where we can say, if a case is created, we can escalate it. It will assign a case to a particular team, create tasks for the team so they can, work on it, and send email also. Okay, now it will be very, maybe definitely it will be confusing for you to understand, like, same thing you can always do with the workflow also, right? The thing is, because we have not covered plugins, so I'll just to give you a brief that you can always register your own code on system operations, or say before or after system operation. This is also we covered last session, like pre-create, post-create, pre-update, post-update, or some more messages. We call it these events or triggers are called messages here. So we can create more message. We can, I mean, use these messages, but if you want to create your own message where you can trigger a plugin or maybe you can hook it in the web API, you can create an action. So action is not a workflow. It is added as a message, as a new event in your system that can be as a new, I would say, piece of code which is actionable. That's why it's called action. Okay, so I'll just move ahead and we'll see when to use. Okay. Again, I said you can do similar things with a workflow or a plugin or some code, but yeah, um, why to use actions? So actions provide, ability to define a single verb. So this is important. So as I said, it encapsulates a multiple operations into a single verb or single operation that your business perform. As I said, you have a term called redeem points, earn points, uh, upgrade tier, downgrade tier. So behind the scenes you are doing multiple things, but you are giving them a proper verb, like a proper action which runs multiple operations behind the scenes. Okay, now so as I said, actions are created messages or triggers. So these new messages now define your process behavior for a particular entity, that customer can earn loyalty points. A customer can redeem loyalty points. And as an example here again, these messages, can be like, we can use verbs like escalate, convert, schedule, route, or approve. So which sounds more reusable, I would say. Okay. And it is of course more easier to manage, and because it works as a single unit for all of your systems. I mean, inside Dynamic 365, using your plugins, using your JavaScripts, and using any third party integration, console apps, so on. Okay. Actions, we last time in the workflow, we saw there is a context which can be either organization, user, or business unit. So what is there a context for this type of a process in action? No, the actions runs in user's context, but action has a type, either global or entity, or we call it unbound or bound. So unbound means you will create a generic action which is not limited to a single entity. That's also a very big difference. Workflow will always be linked to a particular entity. That means it triggers either on a specific action of a on a specific event for an entity. For example, account or contact is created, updated, assigned, or a particular field is updated or deleted. So the record is deleted. That is, so processes are always bound, but actions can be bound and unbound. Unbound mean you can create a generic action, let's say approve, and it you can write a logic in a way that it can run for multiple entities. So that is also one big difference here for actions. Okay, now last time we saw the workflows, they can be triggered or they are triggered with some limited operations. As we said, create of a record, update of a record, delete of a record, change status and assignment. That's all. But actions have multiple ways to get triggered. So first is plugins, which are piece of code that you can register, right? So you can call an action from a plugin. Same action call be can be called from a workflow also, from JavaScript, from web API. So it becomes a function in web API. Like we have create update, delete through HTTP methods through web API. Similarly, you can call action also. It will have a payload. You pass that payload as a request and then Power Automate. One more thing, actions also can have parameters which workflows do not have. So in and out parameters can also be there. And then of course tooling connector can also be used, which is your we'll cover it using .NET. You can connect to Dynamics 365 or modular apps and or I would say Dataverse, and you can uh, you know call it through connector also. Okay, now I'll just take you to the system. I'll hope that it will make more sense. Okay, so I'm here in the process center, which is available from the advanced settings. You go here, click on the advanced settings. Once you are in the settings, you can come to the process center processes, and you will see here uh, your processes. So you can see there are types of actions also already which Microsoft has already provided. But let us go ahead and create a new action for now, just to for our understanding. So when you create an action, I can say let's say contact um, introduce. I'm just giving it a name. Sorry for the spellings. Okay, so here you can see there is a type called action, and now I can select none if I want to do it for global, right? That will be an unbound action. That means it is not dependent or limited to one entity. But if I have a logic which justifies that it will only work for a particular entity, we'll select a particular entity here. Because I'm doing this in this example, I am creating an action for introduction action for contact. So I will choose contact here. Okay, and yes, we'll just say you can see this is not either real time or background. Actions are called or becomes part of your actual execution whenever it is executed. So you can call the action from either a real time process or plugin, or from a background or workflow or asynchronous plugin also. Okay, so you see, we don't have a context here, right? Because it is part of your actual context, actual user context whenever you run. So we can see this is the process name, which is this. You have a unique name. This is the entity category section. One more thing, the actions can roll back. So if they are part of a transaction, they can roll back actions, which is not available in the workflow. The workflow, let's say if there are 4 steps in the workflow, first creates a record, second updates. If anything happens at the update step, it will not roll back the create, but actions can do that. Okay. Then you will see another thing where we have, let's say, parameters. So we can add parameters here, or I would say process arguments, which can be used in your when called by a third party application or your system through JavaScript or plugin. You can pass those parameters. For example, if I'm doing this as an approve, so I can pass my comments or rejection comments as a parameter. So what I will do is I will say okay, comments here. I will give it a name. I will select a type. I would say string because it's string. Then I can tell the direction either it's input, and it can also output the parameter results, any results also. Let's say if it does any calculation or gets, some numbers, it can output that also to another, calling, I would say the calling code or process. So I can give a description here for just my understanding, and I will just click here and it will add it. I can set the requirement level also, of course. But for now, for this example, I'm not going to use it. Okay, you will see rest of the things are very similar to the workflow. You will have same, almost same steps available here. Like you can create record, you can do updates, you can uh, do assignment, change status, and any custom code activities that we'll cover later. So all of the same, send email, start another workflow, change status. You can also perform nested action. You can call another action also. So similar things are there. So for this example, let's say we say, okay, first of all, we will, send an email, I would say. Let's give it some time. Okay, I'll just go ahead and do very basics to save time. Introduction to XYZ company. And we can have introduction goals here. So let's say we are just sending an introduction email to our contact. Goes here. So it can have attachments also, of course, but for this example, I'm saying I will just ignore. I will send it through the owner. The owner will be the from, and two is my contact itself. I will choose contact. It will automatically fill in the email address here, and my spellings, no grammar, sorry. So save and close. So this is first step that I will do in the action. Next, I would say I will create again task, or actually a phone call for the salesperson to follow up. Um, okay, I will say phone call. Okay, now I can, let's say the call is from the owner of the, sorry, contact owner to the contact himself, and phone number, if it is there, we can take from the maybe mobile phone, I guess. Yeah. And uh, intro introductory call. Okay, and I can set duration, sorry, a due date here. I will say okay, choose it's, let's say the due date is, let's say 2 days after the contact, or whenever we will calling this uh, process. So I can choose from the process time. So this is actually equivalent to, date time dot now. So it will add 2 days to the current time whenever this action is, being executed or triggered. Okay, yeah, subject is important, which is locked somehow. Yeah. Yeah. And let's do one more thing. Let's say we also want to add some notes on the parent company of this contact, that the introduction is sent to the POC, our point of contact. So I'm just trying to, make some examples for you that it can have multiple steps. Okay. Sorry, we don't have to create a contact account. We have to create a note. And okay, now I say intro introduction initiated with POC, the point of contact, and instead of relating it to the contact, I'm relating it with the contacts company actually, which is account. Okay, so and I mean this can go on. I can add as many as steps I want. I can add, nested actions. I can, I mean, call another action here. If I'll show you, I can add more. I can start a workflow from here. I can also call custom. These are all custom code activities generated by Microsoft. We can do our own, but again, that is something we'll cover later. So you'll get an idea that we can do multiple steps here. Then again, like any process, this must be activated before we can use it. Okay, now the difference you will see is this will not execute at all unless I trigger it from somewhere. So as I mentioned, you can trigger it through JavaScript. You can call it so from a workflow or a plugin or a web API call. So for now, let us create another process which will actually call this, action. Contact begin introduction. Or I think I already have workflow on the contact. Yeah, something like this. I'll do. So I guess this workflow is being executed when contact is created. So I'll go ahead and I'll just remove all of these steps. And I would say uh, perform action. I will, okay, I will call the action. Sorry, type its name, which is contact introduce, and I will choose the. Now you see, because this is an entity level or bound action, it gives me the name of the entity, and we have to set the reference to that entity, that which contact record it will run, the target actually. So the target will come from here. Second, it will load. So I will select contact here. The contact itself, the current contact is the target. So I'll say okay, that's all. So now this step will pass the current contact's record ID to the action so it can run the mentioned steps that we have done there. So let me save it. Okay, let it activate. And I'll just stop it. Okay, now let's create a contact. Actually, I'll go by account. Let's say I'll open this account. You see, is there anything on the timeline? Yes, there are some. Fine. So let me now go to the contacts and let me add a new contact. Let's say I call this Adnan, and I say his email is aj@abc.com. Let's give it like this. Let's say, and mobile phone 0512345678. Some example here. Save and close. Okay. Now it is created because the workflow was real. Sorry, the background, it will take some time to execute, and you see it's just starting out. It's waiting for resources. Let's give it some time. So what it will do is it will basically call the action. See, it seems very simple maybe for this example, but let's say I was working on a project right now where let's say we were calculating cost of a project. So that calculation was being executed on multiple steps. So first was, let's say you have a project, you have resources, you have your project plan, then you have your costing. So any of these changes, all of these are different tables, right? So the if the project start and date change, your cost is impacted. If the resource you add or remove resources or change their engagement times, the project cost is impacted. If you add any other cost head or a new cost title, or I would say expense, your cost is changed. So all of these different entities. So what I did, I created an action and I reused that action for in all of the updates. So whenever a record is updated, one of these record, I call the same action. It just recalculates the cost. So this is how you are reusing this. And similarly, if some we in the future, if I integrate with the let's say PMO system or something, I can call the same action through web API. So it will also recalculate the cost real time. So okay, this is executed. If I see what it does, sorry, I think I've opened the wrong one. So what it will do is it will basically just call the same action, and we can see here what happened to that. Yeah. So you see, that's all. It can show us what happened. If I click on the properties, it will show me that I passed the contact here, and then we did this. Yeah. Okay. After this, I can come back here and let's see the actual action, which must have added note here in the notes section or the timeline. Yeah, you see, I have say introduction initiated with POC, and if I go to the contact, this contact, I should able to see an introduction email sent and a phone call created already, right? So now I can similarly call this section from multiple, entities and on multiple operations. So as another example, I can call it through the JavaScript. How we call it through the JavaScript? If you look at this one, we last, I think, yeah, when we were working on the JavaScript and we looked at the validations and business logic through JavaScript, we looked at the XRM web API, which is available in the client library, JavaScript library, right? So there we already have a function as part of the web API, xrm.webapi.online.execute. So in this execute, you can actually, what you do is you pass the action name, type first of all, like what you are going to execute. So we say action, and then you give any parameters required, you give the actual target, and it will execute the same action through JavaScript. As an example here, we can see we are saying, okay, these are the parameters we are going to pass. This is the operation or a action name, and we are using one as action type, and that's all it will call it. And as another example, you could see here, we can call action through uh, let me just show you another example here. Second. So there is, sorry, just one. So you just have to create a payload where you tell it that this is an action. These are my parameters and the name of the action, and then you give it a target record, and it will execute the same thing. Similarly, through code, you can also call plugin. Also has a execution way which can be used for actions. Go back here. Yeah, here I go. Okay, so Let's explore a little more on the action side. I wanted to show you one of these actions also, where let's say this one, this was a actually very good example I wanted to show you. So say Sales Insights is a feature of Dynamics 365 Sales, which has more AI based and machine learning based features available for the salesperson. So you can see here they have created one custom action where they are passing these details as the parameters, and then they execute a job similarly, and this is the global action. So similarly you can also create a global action where it will execute. I'll show you an example. Let's say I'll say global. This is my naming convention. uh, Notification to owner, right? This is again a very basic example, but it is very useful. So I'll select here none. So now it will be available as a global. So it will not be linked with a particular, I would say, entity. So you see there is no entity here. So now what I can do is I can say, okay, what I will do is I can uh, send an email as a generic email. So whenever a record is assigned on any entity, we can call this section to send a notification email to the owner that hey, this record is assigned to you. Now again, I can let's say I want to send it through the system admin, so I can select a particular user, but for now I'll just do mine. So I will send it to the for as an example to Adnan. But again, this can all be dynamic. We can do this. Adnan is there, but this can be dynamic because you can take it as a parameter and pass it. So I will say record is assigned as an example. Assignment notification, and that's all for this example. So now this section can be used, whenever a record is assigned. Let's say we can create a workflow, or we can, whenever a record is assigned on account, contact, lead, opportunity. So we can reuse this section whenever there's an assignment. So we'll create a maybe simple workflow which will call the same. So right now it's one step, but if there are multiple steps that you do, it makes more sense. So if you have to do a change, you will just come to this section, do the changes, and you don't have to touch anywhere else. But if you do it with the workflow, so per entity you have to change, all the logics you have done. So which is definitely is not something we do. We try to reuse, like any code programming language. We try to create functions or sections where we can recall it and reuse it. Similarly, we do it here also using action. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I don't think so I would cover more on the actions as of now. But if you want, what we can do is there were some more things on the process which I would like to take some time and cover it. What do you think, Adnan?
Yeah, exactly. Because there are
Yeah,
some points were left. So it's
yes,
better if we can also have a look into those detail.
yeah. I'm just giving an example. I'll create a workflow for account and I'll show you some things that you should know. And it could be the same things for these same things are applied for actions also. So that's why. So last time we saw very limited, and even today we just checked that you can do, create a record, update a record, some actions. But let us now try to understand some more steps. So first of all, we'll cover check condition is something we covered, right? So we can also do wait conditions. Wait conditions are actually is kind of, let's say, whenever an account is created, wait for the 1 day or 2 days and do some action. Or let's say If we are doing it for a contact's birthday notification, we can create a wait condition on, we say unless the birthday come, do not send this email. So that comes under the wait condition. So wait will have a proper time. So if you click on the wait condition, it will open up this pop-up where you can do configuration for the wait time. Takes time. So basically you will select a wait, condition or here we'll specify like till when the workflow will wait and then it will be executed. This is a useful functionality, but if you ask me, we try to avoid processes based on the wait. There are two reasons to that. The one, it's resource consuming, which means let's say if you have a wait condition which will run in let's say 10 days, but every day or every time the system will keep running a job which will check how many wait conditions are there. Whenever it is met, it will continue, it will start, but the thing is, it's resource consuming, so it's, I would try to avoid it. The another way to implement this is you do it on a, maybe we'll cover it in the Power Automate, we run a daily flow and just check, that's better idea, like a batch job. But again, the functionalities that show I would like to show you. So let's say the account, I say the created on, I will say okay, whenever the account is created, is equals, I can give it a specific date or I can do it dynamic. So let's say I will say created on and add the, let's say 5 days to it. After, sorry, remove this. First I should select this and I say, you see account 5 days. So now what it will happen when an account is created, will wait for the 5 days, and then whatever action you will or step you will define here, it will do that. So that is one thing. You can add multiple wait conditions, but again, as I said, I won't recommend wait conditions. These are available in Power Automate also, but try to use batch wherever you can do. Other than that, we can start a child workflow also. So let's do something here. Let's say I'll just create a task here quickly, and I will activate this workflow as a child. I'll just save and close to save time without defining much. Okay, now I say I can say this workflow. Let's say I'm creating this workflow. I will say don't call it on any trigger. Let's make it an organization, and we can call it as a child process, and I'll just save it. So now whatever steps you define, you can call it in another workflow. How we do that? Let me activate this one. And I let me come to, let's say, this contact introduce, and I can sorry, this is an action. From action we can also do, by the way. So I can deactivate this and I can start a new workflow here, or like we did the perform action, we can also say start child workflow. So this will only show the workflows on the company account entity, because we created for the account. It will only show the workflows where you have marked it as the child process. That's one way. Second is there is another thing you call on demand. If you want this workflow to also create call on demand instead of created, workflow by the way can also be, called through code. So in that case you have to select it as an on demand. Another reason of selecting is an on demand, if you want the user to run it, they can also it will show here on the advanced point, sorry. So sometimes to apply process some bulk things. So let's say if I want to, I imported some data, and by mistake I have selected the lead status is wrong. I want to update that. So what I can do is I can go ahead and look for that data. Let me see if I have any leads. I'm taking different examples actually. So I can select those leads which I imported, let's say multiple, and I can run a workflow. It will show me all the on-demand workflows on the lead to update something. So as an example, let me open this lead and we can quickly actually do that. It's a good example. This is something we do a lot, and whenever a user makes a mistake or we do a mistake. So let me, yeah, it's let me pick up let's say country. Let's say I've used the wrong country on the leads. So what I can quickly do is I'll just go to my process center. I'll create a new workflow. I'll say, okay, contact, update, country. I'll just choose workflow, contact, and yeah, background is fine. I'll just go ahead. Sorry, not contact, my bad. Okay, we'll run it on the contact for this example. So I will not call it on any action. I will just say on demand and I will say I can apply conditions, but I'll just skip it for now. And I said just update the records. Just update the country here. Where is the country? Yeah, address one country to let's say UAE. For this example, save and close. I will just activate it. Because I've selected it as on demand, it should show up whenever I search for accounts, sorry, contacts. I say contacts here. Yeah, I'll apply a result. Of course, I can do a filter, but I'm running it on all. So this will change the countries. Let me, for 1 second, add the country field also so we can see the impact. It takes time. Sorry for that. Okay, we're almost there. It will load. Hello. Yeah, another wait. Sorry. So the trials are like that. Okay. We wanted address one country here. That's what we are updating. I don't know, country or county. I did one of these, sorry. So I'll just add both. If you see, we have these right now. Okay. So what I will do, I'll select all of these or run workflow. And wherever I selected as on demand, now I can run workflow on all of these records. So instead of trigger, I can do it here. So this is very helpful for as a super admin or user, sorry, super user and admin, or any as a developer also. So it will take some time, of course, because the background workflow and it will update the address one. If I come here, we should be able to see that it is in progress. Succeeded. Fine. Let me refresh. Yeah, you see I've yeah, I've updated the county. It's okay. So I did it right. So this is an example of on demand. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll just stop here and give it to Adnan for I think he wanted to cover some considerations also if he has. So and if you have any questions, then go ahead and I can answer that. So over to you, Adnan.
So first is the related to the context because action normally runs means it always runs on the calling user security context. So this is what the consideration number one that we have to look into the consideration. Second thing is supports input and output arguments, which is Wahaj, he already explained to you. It always take some new inputs so that the action can be called. And it's up to you if you want to use the action without any input. This is what you have to define the logic within the workflow steps there, or you can say inside the definition. But it totally depends. But it always be supported there. Okay. Then the main thing is about the scope, because as you have seen on the workflow, you have the scope where you can define user base, business unit wise, parent child scope. But here on the action, it always execute on the top of organization scope. This is what its main consideration that you have to take if you want to apply and any security measurements there. Then the most important thing is related to the data change auditing. It always support it in the system there. So these are the all you can say consideration point if you want to use the actions, as well as if you also want to compare it with the workflow. So in today's take home, what we had done, we have covered the processes related to the action and some more about the workflows. And you can also refer the link which are mentioned here to learn more from the Microsoft Docs, or even though you can also Google them. And in the next session, we will be discussing about the business process flows, which is you can say the last part of business logics. And then we will move to the Power Automate side and other topics there. In our upcoming session, what we are going to do, as I mentioned just a while ago, business process flow. We are going to look into the details, and we will go from the scratch till the you can say the execution part. And on September 13th, we will be looking into the Power Automate, and I believe we may require to split the Power Automate process also into the multiple, but we will see how it works. So if it's going to take too much time, then we will split. Otherwise, we will try to cover it within an hour session. I think it will be more than enough. I think we are good to go, and really appreciate everyone for your time today, and hope to see you on next Tuesday on September 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for the session. Bye.
Thank you.